a deep sense of commitment and responsibility that comes from having a mature, or having cultivated a spiritual life.
Well, you know, in the national anthem it says, "God keep our land glorious and free," right? So obviously, the core belief is of a creator and a supreme being
unfortunately,
who watches over everything.
Unfortunately, our Constitution even says that as well, and I find it's kind of a weird contradiction within our Constitution. That one of the very first things that it says is that we acknowledge God as our Creator, and then the
I wouldn't use the term God.
Wait a second, I just said.
Yeah.
What it says in the Constitution is that we recognize God as our Creator, and then the very first point in our rights and freedoms is the right to
worship as we see fit.
Exactly, which is a contradiction.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why it's like that, but it's there.
There's a lot of contradictions. Well, again, you know, I mean, God is just a term. It's not a proper name, right? So it's a corruption in itself to refer to the supreme being by a pagan term.
It means different things to different people.
It does. It does.
Yeah. Well, freedom obviously means a different thing to different people too. You know, I mean, we're supposed to be free, yet it turns out we're not as free as we thought we were, right? And that's going against the bigger picture of how things are supposed to look and be.
Which is more inspiration to the cause, because now we're more aware of how unfree we actually are. And time to fix this.
Well, I see there's an issue of inequality, and that's the foundation theme here that I'm sensing from talking and documenting.
What's really interesting is that when you put the public health data together with education achievement data, together with income mobility data, when you put this all together, it's actually income inequality, and not income per capita. It's not the richest country, but it's the most equal countries that have the lowest infant mortality, that have the lowest teenage births, that have every metric you can put your finger on. Do better when you bring
but with all the
people out of poverty, and when you
don't see Rob Ford here because he's got too much gravy on his face anyway. You can't recognize
all I know is, man, like, it sucks to be poor.
It does, yeah.
You know, and
really, there's a lot that we can do. There's a lot that we can do.
I mean,
there's a lot we can do together.
When you look at the statistics of the money that's floating around and the resources and the wealth in this country,
anything. It's a matter.
There's enough to solve our problems.
People and collectively and as institutions making decisions that matter to people.
We shouldn't have a national debt, for one thing.
No, we should.
That's a scam.
Well, I mean,
if you look at the way banks are running things, there's no reason for us to have a debt.
Absolutely.
Because they privatized.
Or even if there is, the debt should be with the Bank of Canada. If it was with the Bank of Canada, which is owned by the people, then the government could pay it back with no interest.
Well, we wouldn't have that interest or the debt.
Exactly.
It's the fact that
There would be no need for it.
Well,
it's like a globalization of poverty.
That's the way it always was until the 1980s, and it started with Brian Mulroney. He started taking out bank loans with private banks and having to pay them back at prime interest rates. So now we're at the point where we are paying more in interest every year as a people than we actually owe.
That's not actually. I mean, that's not actually accurate. We do pay interest, but I mean, a long time ago we made a decision to manage the number of banknotes in circulation, which has to go up as the economy grows by issuing debt. And that's how the growth in the money supply is managed, and that's set precisely. It's set by economists who monitor this very carefully. They do it quite very well educated people. They do it competently. But managing the size of the money supply by issuing debt's not the only option. It was just the decision that was made, and that means that there's a lot of debt to go around, and the idea is that the companies that are going to expand their factory, the most productive ones will be the ones that are willing to pay the certain interest rate that's set, and that you can also control the growth of the economy. You can either encourage growth, or you can rein in an overheated economy where everybody's got a job and you're sort of running up against the red line. So by adjusting interest rates.
But how do you feel about voting for the solution and not the politician? And firing the politician.
Well, just elect ones that represent basic positive values of like having people reach their full potential, of like not walking people up but developing people. I don't know. I can't.
So
I just can't.
So you trust that we can just vote for a politician and trust that he'll represent the people?
The progressive politicians that I've met have been trustworthy, decent people who have dedicated their lives to social progress.
There are good politicians out there.
Absolutely.
Absolutely,
really?
there are.
Do they all support abortion?
I'm not okay. That's such a. I mean, that's completely separate. That's just driving a wedge into the conversation.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
I think it concerns everyone in human rights. You know.
Well, abortion is already legal. There are no restrictions whatsoever.
It's already legal.
The current state of the law is that there's no restrictions whatsoever on abortion. And not even the conservatives are. I mean, not even the conservatives said that they're going to.
So that's kind of shooting ourselves in the foot, you know. Before you can even be born free, you're murdered, right? You lose your rights before you can even be born.
If you want to reduce abortion rates, you reduce the public. Jeez.
Like it's hypocritical to talk about human life and rights and all this, and no one seems to be concerned. You know, like I mean, I'm looking at all the issues that are relative.
I think abortion is a completely separate issue that has nothing to do with this issue.
Well,
obviously,
apples and oranges
it's altogether separate to be dealt with separately.
Apples and oranges, right?
No, not apples and oranges. More like apples and bricks. It's a completely separate, absolutely nothing to do with this movement. It's a separate thing that is important unto itself. That is not this.
Yeah, but there's all kinds of messages in this movement. There's no one message.
They are, but they do all boil down to
inequality.
Economic inequality.
Well,
yeah. I mean,
I think it goes beyond economics. It's about freedom.
Solving economic inequality addresses a huge raft of problems that everybody will agree are undesirable.
Well, we're talking about human rights
that are sad and terrible and tragic. You know?
Human rights encompass a lot of issues, and this cannot be just one issue of money, because money is not going to solve the problem.
It's not just income inequality. It's of every measure. It's people reaching. You know.
Well, you know, I mean, my point is, how can you support one thing and not something else, which totally contradicts?
I support a woman's right
the
to
bigger
choose.
picture.
I do.
It's her body. You know, it's her body. And there are. I mean, you know.
You mean choose not to get pregnant, or choose to murder her child before the child is born?
What if she was raped?
Well,
and
I mean,
she's 13 years old.
We really don't need to go into this.
Then you're talking about trying to condone murder for whatever reason.
Yeah.
What if the child is still innocent, that's not born?
I mean,
you're trying to like find an excuse to say it's okay under this circumstance.
The good news is that you'll never have to make that decision for your own body. I mean, I'll never have to make that decision for my own body.
Yeah, but that doesn't justify the numbers.
You know,
I mean, right now, it's a major statistic in the world's population, where a lot of people that could be taxpayers, they could be anything.
Well, if you want to reduce abortion rates, finance sex ed. That's an empirical fact.
Exactly. That is
finance sex education? How about just finance education in general?
I agree with that too.
You know,
I'm going to sign off.
All right, man. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.